Hi, my name is Monty Pal, and I'm a medical oncologist at City of Hope in Los Angeles. Welcome to GU Oncology Now.
I'm Brian Rini. I'm a Chief of Clinical Trials at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and we're going to talk today about several different areas of kidney cancer. So our next topic is talking about clinical trials broadly in the advanced kidney cancer space. I guess maybe I'll start with the adjuvant setting, where the largest ongoing trial now is Pembro plus belzutifan versus pembrolizumab, a Merck-sponsored trial, quite obviously building on the Pembro monotherapy keynote data. There also is a large study in the UK called Rampart that was in the first generation of IO studies that does include CTLA-4 inhibition. So those are two big pieces of adjuvant data that will add to that story. In the frontline setting, with Cosmic, we've moved into triplets. Cosmic was a little disappointing from a toxicity standpoint and lack of survival signal, but I still believe triplets are viable and need to be tested in kidney cancer. Merck has a large triplet study of len-pembro as a control, and then the two experimental arms either add belzutifan or CTLA-4 inhibition. Exciting trial that's nearing completion. And then there are other plans in the frontline setting. I think there's some other triplet plans, so we're moving into this. I think we're going to have to do so thoughtfully. I think Cosmic taught us we can't just stick drugs together and expect good tolerance and outcomes. But I think and the other thing I should mention is biomarker-based trials. Monty, you're involved with our study of Optic, looking at RNA-seq to select patients, and I'm biased because it's our study, but I think that kind of study is really important. We do a lot of talking about biomarkers. We don't do a lot of acting on it. And we just need to, put our money where our mouth is and try it and see what happens and do the hard metastatic biopsies and the hard sequencing and informatics if we really, truly want to individualize therapy.
I think you've highlighted three of the most important trials, in my opinion, kind of moving forward in the field. The biomarker study is, as you suggested, all echo represents us, actually doing something as opposed to just talking about it, which is terrific. And I really applaud you for taking the plunge. I actually think your first line study looking at, len pembro plus belzutifan versus len pembro plus CTLA-4 inhibitor versus len pembro actually really sort of stands a good chance to work despite Cosmic 313, or, maybe in support of it to some extent. And I think the reason for that is that Cosmic 313 took this major element out of the investigator's hands, which is knowing what compound they're dealing with a placebo-controlled design. And I just feel like that toxicity management with a triplet might be so critical. I don't know how you feel about that, Brian, but I think that's a key advantage.
Yeah, having treated patients on that trial, I think, and even with doublets, right? Tox management and knowing what drug's causing what, even in practice with the doublets is difficult, right? when obviously what drugs you're giving patients, and in a trial when it's blinded, it adds an element of uncertainty, which I think is never good for patient care.
I'll just mention too, there's some really exciting stuff happening in the advanced disease space. We've talked about HIF-2 inhibitors in the past and belzutifan and so forth. And I think that's going to be another key element in our armamentarium for kidney cancer. Beyond that, there's some really cool novel stuff looking at CAR T cells and bispecific T cell engagers. It's all really in its infancy, but there's some really selected targets, I think, that we can exploit in kidney cancer. Much like in lymphoma, they've got CD19, and for instance, myeloma, they've got BCMA, and kidney cancer, I think CD70 and this new target we're working with right now called ENPP3 really have legs and might not necessarily be a great target to exploit with a TKI, but might actually be great fodder for a homing missile like a CAR T cell.
Yeah, and we saw data at ASCO GU about G250 based imaging agent, that Zircon study that Brian Shuck presented, and I think we all are thinking of the next step of that as a therapeutic modality, and I think there are some early studies going on. So I think you'd agree we desperately need new targets in kidney cancer. We've beaten the heck out of VEGF and PD-1 as targets, to patient benefit, but I think we're all searching for new targets. And as you say, there are a number of studies going on. Maybe we'll close. I just wanted to ask you about sort of that second line setting where we have some IO TKI versus TKI studies ongoing. What do you think is the next advance in that PD-1 refractory second line setting?
Well, I had a lot of physical and emotional energy invested in Contact 3, and we just saw in a press release the study's negative didn't meet its primary endpoint for PFS. So, I do think that it challenges the notion that immunotherapy following immunotherapy, at least with, PD-1 followed by PD-L1, my guess is this is going to apply to PD-1 followed by PD-1 as well, is probably a no-go. I think it really just makes us want to push the envelope with some of these novel targets that we just discussed. I think we've got to get away from our current axes and focus on different axes to hit kidney cancer.
Yeah, agree. I think we've seen this with CTLA-4 inhibition, that if you're going to give it, you really need to give it up front. And maybe that's the lesson, is if we're giving multiple immune therapies, we need to stack them up front as opposed to in sequence. So, but lots of exciting things going on.